go without taking all of his money, robbing him. His name looks like he is from the Romans, Ar-Roomie, from Ar-Room, which is like the Romans, people who were living in Turkey and this part of the world. But he was actually initially not a Roman. He was عربي خالص. أبوه من نمير وأمه من تميم. But his father was actually the governor, the leader of one of the cities in Iraq nowadays, close to Al-Basha. So he grew up the first 5 years of his age in this area. But you know, world at this time was full of trouble, just as it is nowadays. He was attacked by one of the Romans. His father was a governor for this city, and it used to be affiliated to the Persia, the Empire of Persia. And the enemies attacked, his town, and he was taken as a captive. And then they would deal with people like this as slaves. He was dealt with as a slave. He grew up as a slave in one of the palaces of the kings of the Romans. And he got to know the society from within. He got to know the society from within, and he didn't like this kind of life. He saw all kinds of problems, troubles of this society that was lacking a lot of qualifications or a lot of, he saw a lot of problems from within that society. One day he heard his master was speaking to one of the priests of his time, and the priest told him it's about the time of the prophet that will come at the end of time. Romans were Christians. So, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we know from the Quran that he was prophesied in the Bible and in the Gospels in general. So this man, who is a scholar in Christianity, Sohaib, being the slave, living in this house, he heard this priest telling his master that it is a time of a prophet that we read about him in the Bible, and he will appear in Mecca, in the Arab place, and specifically in Mecca. So from that time, Sohaib kept thinking about that. He kept, thinking about it until, one day he managed to escape, to just gain his freedom. Another narration mentioned that he was sold and ended up being in Mecca. Anyways, he ended up being in Mecca, and he started, kind of business there. The narration that mentioned that he was sold to a Meccan master, Abdullah ibn Jud'an. Later on, Abdullah ibn Jud'an figured out how smart was this person, intelligent, and he actually gave him his freedom. The other narration is that he escaped and he got to Mecca. Anyways, he ended up being a merchant in Mecca. He helped Abdullah ibn Jud'an so much in his business, and he also had his own business that grew up, and he made a lot of money. And then all of a sudden he heard about this prophet. Now Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ was calling everybody at the beginning secretly. So not everybody got to know about his da'wah. But since he is living in Mecca, he got to know about it. And they used to call him an Amin. So he knew him, that was mentioned to him, that was told to him by this priest. That was all the things that he knew about the Prophet to come, just applied to the Prophet ﷺ. He came all the way, he asked, and he tried to investigate. He found out that he used to meet in Dar al-Arqam, Ibn Abi al-Arqam, at the very first few years. And he got all the way to there, and he found one of his friends, close friends, Ammar ibn Yasir. And everybody is looking around and trying to make sure that nobody is seeing them. So he said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm trying to, check out about whatever is going on with Muhammad and his people." He said, "Well, I'm interested in the same thing. Let's go together." They got together to the house, and they found the Prophet ﷺ, and they sit down, listen to him. He introduced Islam to them, and in the matter of a few seconds, few minutes, both of them, everybody was competing with the other to stretch his hand and give shahada or give bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ. Him and Ammar ibn Yasir, his friend. They accepted Islam at the same time, and they spent, that was like sometime during the day, they spent the entire day with the Prophet ﷺ until night fall, and then they started coming out. And from that time on, they will have another direction in their life. Specifically Ammar and Sohaib, because they were weak. Ammar, or Sohaib specifically, didn't have anybody to support him. He didn't have a family in this place. So somebody like Ammar somebody like Bilal, somebody like Sohaib that we're talking about tonight, Quraysh will get to them, number one thing, because they don't have, this is an easy prey for them, easy target for them. فأخذ بنصيب من العذاب ومن الصعوبات. He got his share as far as punishment and torment and everything. And it was not only him, most of Muslims that was the case. When it was the time for Al-Hijrah, he was planning to make Hijrah with the Prophet ﷺ and his friend. With Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ, he was planning to be the third of them. But actually Quraysh, they used to practice this kind of arrogance mostly on the weakest people, like Sohaib. So they kind of appointed some, they were monitoring him, some surveillance camera on him, so to know where he is going and everything, and to not allow him to go to the Hijrah. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, we know what happened, and he managed to make the Hijrah along with Abu Bakr, but he was not allowed, Sohaib was not allowed, or didn't get the chance to. But a while after that, he knew that everybody is looking at him. He tried to find a way to get out from Mecca, and he ended up escaping. But the people who were looking at him, the surveillance, the monitors, they got to know shortly after he left. So they got to their horses and they went, very fast trying to catch up with him, and they got him very close to Mecca. He used to be a very good archer. كان معه كنانته وأسهمه, he has the arches and everything, and they got to him. قال والله لقد علمتم أنني من أرمى قريش رجلا. By Allah, I am one of the most skillful people as far as like archers, as far as shooting arrows. And by Allah, I'm not going to let you come close to me unless I finish up all the arrows, all the arches with me, and every arrow will get to a man. And then I fight with you with my sword until I don't have anything with me. Or I have a plan for you. You might take your money and go back if that's what you're after. He said, well, anyway, you came to us صعلوقا لا مال لك. You came with no money. You made all this money here. Tell us where the money, and we let you go. He told them where the money was. They got to the money, they got it, they let him go. The minute he got to Al-Madinah, it was like a couple of days, few days after the Prophet ﷺ left, and he catched the Prophet ﷺ in Quba. Prophet ﷺ spent like 4 days in Quba before he proceeded to Medina. So he catched him in Quba, and the Nabi ﷺ saw him, and once he saw him, قال ربح البيع أبا يحيى ربح البيع أبا يحيى ربح البيع أبا يحيى. Successful business, the father of Yahya, successful business, successful trade that you made with Allah. قال يا رسول الله والله ما سبقني إليك أحد ما أخبرك بذلك إلا جبريل. By Allah, I know I was so fast, and I know for sure nobody came to you before me to tell you about what happened. Because he said like successful business, like the bargain you got is successful. And it should be Jibreel that told you about that. And it was Jibreel alayhi salam that came with the wahy from above the 7 heavens, from Rabbul Izzah, the Lord of Majesty, coming down all the way to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The ayah, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. Amongst the people, there are some who sell themselves, or you can say buy themselves, for the sake of Allah. So he kind of bought himself or sold them, give them everything they want to just escape ابتغاء مرضات الله, for the sake or for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was like subhanallah, try to imagine an ayah talking about you and telling you are sincere. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said he is sincere, he is not amongst the people mentioned of the people of Al-Jannah. But if an ayah is talking about him, that's enough. He will make it to Al-Jannah. That's the difference probably between us and the Sahabah. They were so sincere, so doing the action for the sake of Allah. Ayat, Quran is coming down to say that, to confirm that. Yet he was working so hard after that. He didn't get it and say, well, I have an ayah right here, you could see. And that would be sufficient for him, but he kept working with the Prophet ﷺ, establishing Islam and doing a lot of good things, all the way to the time of Umar. And after the time of Umar, he lived for over 70, specifically 70 years, and he passed away at year 38 after Hijrah. And one more thing to show you how important this person was. When Umar was assassinated, he was stabbed, I guess like over 10 times when he was leading the prayer in Fajr, and he didn't die right away. Umar radiallahu anhu was like so strong, so he died like a few days, couple of days after that. During that time, Umar appointed Sohaib, Ar-Roomie. He said Sohaib should lead the people in prayer until you choose the Khalifa, until you elect the Khalifa. So he chose him to be like Rais Muaqqat or Khalifa Muaqqat, like a temporary leader for Muslims specifically for prayers until they choose someone, Muslims choose whatever or elect whomever they want. رحمة الله عز وجل على صهيب وعلى صحابة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى جميع أمواتنا وأموات المسلمين ونسأل الله أن يجعلنا على خطاهم إن شاء الله. May Allah make us follow in their footsteps. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه.